Ingram Wade Varnell was born on November 28, 1923, in Colton, California, a small town in the southern part of the state. He was the first child born to his parents, Logan and Clara. The Varnells continued to grow as the couple had two more children, Helen and Albert. Very little information on Ingram's early life is available, but the Varnell family continued to live in California for the rest of the 1920s. While his wife and children resided in sunny California, Logan Varnell traveled far to provide a living for his family. Rather than working a job in town, Logan worked in Alaska as a fur trapper. It is unknown for how long he worked away from his family, but the distance between him and his family eventually closed in 1930. That year, an article in the Fairbanks Daily News Miner reported that Clara and Ingram, who was only 6 years old at the time, were moving to Alaska as Logan earned a job as an agent for the Kotzebue Fur and Trading Company. Trading the pleasant California weather for the harsh Arctic climate, the Varnells settled in Kotzebue, a small, isolated community on the Alaskan coast. Despite being listed as living in Kotzebue, Ingram spent a significant portion of his younger years outside of the remote town. He began his high school career by attending a school in Nome, a city almost 200 miles south of Kotzebue. While this was an extreme distance from home, Ingram's high school experience concluded in a location even further away. In September 1938, at the age of 14, Ingram transferred in his sophomore year to Juneau High School in Juneau, Alaska, which is more than 1,000 miles away from his family. Being so far from home and unable to see his family meant that Ingram led a fairly independent life for a young man. Juneau was hundreds of miles away from Kotzebue, and the only means of transportation was limited to ships, a problem compounded by the fact that Kotzebue was not a regular stop. Instead of going back home, Varnell worked in Juneau during summer vacation to help support himself. Despite the stresses of transferring to a new school and living without the comfort of family, Ingram flourished at Juneau High School. After an uneventful first year as a sophomore, Varnell quickly proved to be a popular student. He was elected to the Board of Control as well as the junior class president in only his second year. Along with these positions, he capped off his junior year by joining the ski club. His senior year was also impressive as Varnell was elected president of Board of Control and president of the Associated Student Body. Ingram even displayed a good sense of humor with his remarks made in the 1941 class will and testament. I, Ingram Varnell, bequeath the presidency of the student body to some aspiring youth in the hope that he will not have to use a dumbbell for a gavel as I have had to do. Though he did not continue with ski club, he joined the Boys Rifle Club for his last year. Varnell was also a good student as he had two majors, English and Science. Now graduated from high school, Ingram looked outside of Alaska for his future. In fall 1941, he enrolled at Washington State College in Pullman, Washington. Though much of the world was engaged in World War II by 1941, the United States remained uninvolved. Though anxieties surrounding the potential war loomed, regular peacetime life persisted for Americans. As Varnell started at WSC, he looked to have a traditional college experience as he pledged to the Tau Kappa Epsilon fraternity in September. As he had been in high school, Ingram quickly became a popular student as the sheer distance from his home in Kotzebue became a point of interest. In a Washington State Evergreen article discussing what brought students from parts of the country to WSC, Varnell was mentioned alongside students from Hawaii and even Panama. Stating that WSC offers everything to a young man, the student newspaper pointed to a specific reason why Ingram chose this college. Take Ingram Varnell of the TKE house, for instance. He comes from Kotzebue, Alaska, and WSC offers him his girlfriend from home. Not content with just being a fraternity pledge from a distant place, Ingram was bold enough to stand out in other ways. During the homecoming football game against the University of Washington, he was listed among the marching chorus boys who performed at halftime with the WSC band. Curiously, Ingram was listed as Barney Varnell, a nickname that he would be known intermittently as during his WSC years. Ingram also joined the WSC chapter of Intercollegiate Knights, which was an honorary service organization. In honor of the 20th anniversary of its founding, a national convention was held in Missoula, Montana on April 3rd and 4th, 1942. Of the 55 WSC pledges, Ingram was one of the 40 that were selected to be initiated at the national convention. To conclude an eventful freshman year, Ingram graduated from pledge to member of the TKE fraternity. In the middle of Ingram's first year at WSC, the United States finally joined World War II following the attack on Pearl Harbor. Though he was returning to WSC in the fall of 1942, Varnell prepared himself for service. While back in Juneau for the summer, Ingram filled out his registration card for the draft on July 30th, 1942. Returning to Pullman at the start of the semester, Ingram's second year began memorably. A story of his return trip from Juneau was featured in the student newspaper as Varnell and a companion brought with them 3 husky pups. To keep the pups cool in the summer heat, they were placed in a tub filled with ice-cold water. The article mused, "Now one of the 3 huskies is pledged number 1 at the TKE house here on campus. The $64 question is, will he make his grades? An answer in next year's issue." Ingram remained a popular student at WSC and was once again seen as a leader within the community. He was one of the 3 candidates to be named the sophomore class president, but declined the opportunity. Instead of leading the class, Varnell focused his attention on his fraternity and the Greek social scene. During the Harvest Ball, he took center stage with a romantic gesture. The student newspaper reported that Ingram put on the unscheduled entertainment when he gave his TKE pin to Matilda Drennan, Kappa Del Pledge. The obliging orchestra played Lamp of Memory in their honor. Though Ingram was making the most of his second year, his time at WSC was gradually coming to a close. Ingram's second semester in his sophomore year continued to be a memorable period in his young life. He continued to remain one of the most recognized and respected members of the WSC community, as he was frequently mentioned in the student newspaper. In January 1943, his fraternity held an election for officers and Varnell won the sergeant-at-arms position. Shortly after his election victory, Ingram was once again spotted in the social section of the WSC newspaper. The romance between Varnell and Matilda Drennan continued as the 2 were spotted on a squirrel hunt that was likely a date between the 2. The rest of the semester passed with little excitement until a dinner event by the TKE fraternity. In a meeting documented by the Spokane Chronicle newspaper, Ingram met Jose R. Suarez, a student visiting from Chile. Suarez was in Pullman for soil conservation research and was seated next to Varnell for the dinner. The newspaper photographed the 2 men talking to one another, pointing out how the distance between Ingram's home in Alaska and Suarez's home in Chile were more than 13,000 miles apart. The semester concluded shortly after the event, as Varnell was now halfway through his college education. Though Ingram's future at WSC seemed very bright, this ended up being his final semester in Pullman. Ingram Varnell didn't return to WSC after his sophomore year, which suggests that he enlisted into the Army Air Corps shortly after June 1943. His military career suffers from a lack of available sources, but some inferences can be made from certain documents. It is unknown where he did his initial training, but Ingram displayed a desire and talent for leadership during this period. In September 1944, the Washington State Evergreen reported that Varnell received his commission as a second lieutenant in Chandler, Arizona, likely at Williams Air Force Base. He departed from Arizona for further training, but there is no sources pointing to where he may have been stationed afterwards. Later sources do show that Ingram was sent to Randolph Field near San Antonio, Texas, in early August 1945. By this point in the war, the Allies had defeated Nazi Germany in Europe, but Imperial Japan remained the last remaining Axis enemy. While the atomic bombings of Japan were only a few days away, many were unsure when the Japanese would ever surrender. Even after the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki took place on August 6th and 9th, Japan did not immediately capitulate. This meant that thousands of soldiers like Ingram remained in service, with all the potential hazards of duty still present. Ingram worked as an engineer on the B-29 Superfortress bombers, but also took part in flying exercises while at Randolph Field. At 2:45 p.m. on August 31st, Varnell was involved in an aircraft accident near Highway 281, a few miles north of San Antonio. The accident killed Ingram instantly, and occurred only 2 days before the surrender of Japan and the end of World War II. On September 6th, Varnell was laid to rest at the Fort Sam Houston National Cemetery in San Antonio, Texas. Ingram Varnell was only 21 at the time of his death. The sacrifice of Ingram Varnell was commemorated by his fraternity, Tau Kappa Epsilon, soon after the war. In 1949, Varnell's name was added to a plaque made by the fraternity, which listed every member who died during World War II. Nevertheless, unlike the majority of other WSC veterans who died during World War II, Ingram's name was not added to the WSU Veterans Memorial in Pullman. Because his death occurred at the end of the war, Ingram might have just been overlooked as WSC was curating a list of all the students that had fell during the war. As the years passed, Varnell was seemingly forgotten as the other names of other servicemen were added to the memorial. However, recent work done by the Fallen Cougars Project has rediscovered Ingram's story, and it is hoped that his name will rightfully join the many others on the WSU Veterans Memorial.